Welcome back everyone to High Strangeness in Alaska. I primarily do Bigfoot videos and that's what I enjoy, but I also, secondary to that comes UFOs, aliens, that kind of thing, and then other cryptids and then other weird supernatural stories after that. So a percentage of these videos will be UFO videos, and I appreciate you all for coming along for the ride. But I had to do a video on this because I have been researching aliens and UFOs for years, and it started with Project Serpo. We're going to get into that, but recently we've got the David Grusch, the whistleblower, coming out, and I didn't even like Spotify that much. I liked my Amazon Music account, so I specifically downloaded Spotify the other day just to listen to Joe Rogan's podcast on David Grusch's whistleblowing program about the government finding these extraterrestrial beings in crashed aircraft and reverse engineering, and it just is really bizarre. This is the ultimate psyops. It's the ultimate espionage mind game, the evolution of the Cold War that we're seeing on this alien UFO front as more information is being released slowly to the public, and all the pieces are starting to fit together. Now we're talking about the Roswell crash, which we will talk about. We're talking about Project Serpo, which I primarily want to talk about. We want to talk about the whistleblowers, David Grusch, that is coming out. And then on top of that, we want to talk about Bob Lazar, because all of those different elements, including Colonel Corso's book on Area 51 and Roswell, they all have different interlocking pieces that corroborate the other story, which is just really bizarre. So you could say that if somebody really studied all the science out there, all the research being done, all the stories and reports, they could copycat off each other and come up with this alien narrative, but it does not seem like it, because there are some things, especially in the Bob Lazar story, that you couldn't have known or couldn't have predicted ahead of time, and it goes along with these other things. So let's start with Project Serpo. It all started, and I read the original chains. The original email threads came out, probably 2007, but I started reading them in 2009 when serpo.org was still on the interwebs. It has since been removed, which is interesting, and there's a chance that whoever put it together just stopped paying for the website, and it was such an old website that it just went away. You can still find copies of all the emails and all the chains. I went ahead, and I forgot the author, but I'm going to throw it up because it's the best resource on Project Serpo that I have found. This audio book that was on audio, I guess AI or my iPhone saw that I was talking a lot about Serpo, and it recommended this book on Audible, and it took days to finish it. It was a lot of hours, and it wasn't transcribes of all the Serpo emails, but it did summarize all of them, and there was some stuff that I didn't even remember, because Project Serpo, the emails were being updated in the late 2010s, and I think they had updates all the way till 2017 or something like that, 14, and then they stopped updating it. That was it, and it went away. So Project Serpo is the ultimate government disinformation program thrown out to the public to throw off our adversaries, Russia, China, but there is a tad of truth to it. I don't know how much percentage. I'm guessing maybe 20 to 40% of it was true. The rest was fluff to make it seem insane and to also throw off our adversaries from the truth. Now, Project Serpo, it's very interesting. There is the connection of Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and that well-known famous movie director made that movie. The word on the street was he had some contacts, Hollywood had some contacts from these government agencies, and it was there was a kernel of truth to the movie, specifically at the end of the movie when there was exactly 12 people and they had 2 women. It's argued that there were no women on the original exchange program. So Project Serpo is the supposed government US-led exchange program with aliens called the Ebens from Zeta Reticuli star system. Now, it's supposedly started from Roswell. They recovered 2 spacecraft in different areas of New Mexico. And there was one EBEN, extraterrestrial biological entity, and I forgot what the N was, but that's what these projects, they call them, EBEN, that survived. And they brought them to Area 51 at different Air Force bases, and they finally figured out the language, how to communicate with this being. They finally figured out some of the technology, started reverse engineering. They were able to contact the Eben home base, and the story is fascinating. Of course, a lot of it's made up, but even if it's made up, it is such an enjoyable story to read in the books and the email chains themselves. I listened to I read almost all of the email chains. Obviously, Mr. Martinez was a plant of disinformation that spearheaded Project Serpo and was throwing out lots of disinformation. There's a whole bunch of espionage and just politics and this shadow game that is played. They brought Linda Moulton Howe, one of the biggest UFO researchers, into it. And then there was these attacks where the site was hacked. Photographs were obviously proven to be faked, to say that all the other photographs and information were faked. And it was this weird campaign from different fronts to discredit the website or make it seem like misinformation with some truth, or make it seem like everybody was lying. Obviously, there was a lot of lying in it, but I think there was some truth. So the story is, in the late 40s, the spacecraft was found, this entity was captured. The Greys are mean, but this entity even was nice, and it talks about, you know, a dozen or so different races that have been visiting the Earth, different alien races. And what's interesting is, I think they specifically thrown off all the technical things. They made it very vague. They obviously did not include real technology in the description of the propulsion and power systems, but some of it does connect with what Bob Lazar said in his extra whistleblowing thing about how the crafts move and how they were powered. And then when we see the modern 2019, the explosion on the media of the Nimitz reports, and the government finally admits that these experiences are happening, and we have the Nimitz Tic Tac video. That spacecraft was moving exactly as Bob Lazar had stated when they saw it on film doing that rotation. Now, the pilots also said it was bouncing around as if it was using some kind of force field, and that is what Bob Lazar said too. But going back to Project Serpo, they did kind of throw off some of the technology, because we don't want to give our adversaries the truth about what kind of technology we have, even though they have their own programs, reportedly have had similar exchange programs. I highly doubt that. Now, did the government actually send a group of 12 people to an alien world on this alien craft? That is what I'm not sure. I have no doubt that we recovered spacecraft. We have all kinds of reports of crashes, and then all of a sudden there's helicopters and, you know, armored personnel and people, you know, locking down the area and recovering spacecraft. We know that's happened. Pretty sure reverse engineering has happened. If there was an exchange program on an alien world, it would be the most incredible story of all time. I'm not 100% sure that that happened. I like to think that it did, and the story is fascinating. So they got this creature in the 40s. In the 50s, they're trying to reverse engineer. They're interviewing the creature. In the 60s, they're making some headway. in the 60s, you know, they're making some headway, and in 70s or so, late 60s, early 70s, they have this team of experts. It's all military people with no family ties. They're the best of the best, and, you know, signed all these things, you know, of course, they won't disclose what happened. Kept them on the Air Force base, locked them away from society, just did all kinds of drills, and then sent them on this craft after 2 different visits from the Ebens, and, you know, agreeing to do this exchange program. We kept one of the Ebens here at an Air Force base working with them, and then we sent people to this fantastic world. Really interesting. A lot of the world description just seems far out fantasy. Some of it could be true. I think there is a kernel of truth to it, but it's really fascinating. Some of the people died out there. 2 of the members decided to stay on the alien world, which was fascinating, and then a few of them returned back and eventually died. Obviously, they were subjected to radiation and things like that. So I don't think any of them are still living to this day, but what a story. Read about Project Serpo. You can find everything free on the interweb if you want to look up stuff, but I'm kind of sad that serpo.org has been taken down, because that was everything. Everything was there. I was reading all the reports in the late 2010s, and there were even new. Battery died on the camera, so we have a short intermission here. I wanted to re-show the footage of the UFO I had filmed while in the mountain pass of the Chuke Mountains just a few months ago. What I thought was interesting is it seemed to be a very bright light, and I felt it was getting high up in the atmosphere at the angle I was at, and it did not make any sounds because I thought that it could have possibly been a helicopter, like a military helicopter with a very bright light, but they're typically not in that area, and it did not move like any conventional aircraft that I know of. So I thought that was very interesting. I also wanted to point out the fact that the language, acronyms, and everything from the Project Serpo threads really seemed to be genuinely from someone from military or government work, just the tone of it. Anyone can research acronyms and try to sound like a military person, but if you have worked in that capacity, I have been a military contractor for 5 years, you kind of get a feeling that somebody was in the system, whoever was typing up a lot of those threads. So even though it was kind of dated, some of the tapes were from the 60s, and there was supposedly just boxes and boxes of hundreds of hours of cassette tapes that they had before cassette tapes even came out. A lot of interesting stuff, but back to the video. The whole story was just insane. It was so fun to read, and these people went on this trip. They went to the home world. I think where a lot of the disinformation comes from is there was this whole description of the Ebens alien religion and how they affected us, and said they've been visiting. That was total BS. I didn't believe that, but there was some interesting stuff about that, how they lived. I think that whoever put this out didn't want to let our adversaries know some of the truth about the aliens, but they did mention the Greys, which we know the Greys are not nice beings, and they were called the, I forgot, they had some other word other than the Greys listed, but anyways, there's this whole exchange program. The soldiers did bring some weapons. It got testy at times. The Ebens didn't like to eat meat. They did kill some animals and eat some meat, and the Ebens kind of allowed it. Fascinating, fascinating story. But when we look at all of it, and we look at the reports now that the government is finally admitting, yes, there are UFOs that out there that we don't understand how they can do this. There are some top scientists, some top people that I just abhor, because they are putting out stuff in mainstream science saying this is such BS, Obviously, these things that the government is filming are drones that are just, you know, the top Chinese drones available. That is such BS. Yes, I do believe China and Russia have some amazing drones, and maybe they're fooling around with different propulsion systems. But when we talk about the Tic Tac UFOs and what they were doing, and we see them on radar 80,000 feet, you know, above the earth, basically sometimes in the upper atmosphere, and able to travel, you know, 20 feet from the surface of the ocean in a second or two. And they are also staying. If they were drones, they wouldn't be able to do that. If they were conventional drones, they would not be able to stay up in the upper atmosphere for days upon days upon days on batteries. Drones need batteries. There is no known power system that can power a drone in the upper atmosphere like that, have it do these crazy maneuvers and not have airplanes refueling them, replacing batteries. There's just no way. So for those scientists to completely debunk the Tic Tac UFOs and all these things the Air Force pilots were saying, just publicly in major news articles and publications and journals saying that, oh, you UFO people are crazy like you've always been. No, these are obviously drones. That is such BS, because no drone made on this earth has a power supply system to keep something in the upper atmosphere for that long. So to me, those people are awful, and they are obviously just trying to discredit this, and they're trying to, they're either really closed-minded or they're purposely trying to keep people from the truth. So that angers me. And also the maneuvers that these things are doing. So we got the Tic Tac UFOs, and then we got the UFO that Air Force pilots saw up close that was like, it was like a clear sphere with a black cube in it. Just crazy. But all these things come together. I really recommend you get Jesse Desmond's book, Saucers of the North, I believe it's called. I'm reading it for a second time. I'm going to read it 3 times and bookmark pages, because Alaska is very similar to New Mexico. In some ways, it may be even better than New Mexico because of the elements. It just keeps people out of some areas. That's why it's, you know, Bigfoot is so prevalent up here, because there's just places you can't get to by foot. New Mexico has a very low population, very rural, and very spread out population, as Alaska. And, you know, it's hard to get to some places in New Mexico. Alaska, it's really hard to get to certain places. And it's just a perfect place for alien spacecraft to come and check out, observe, have bases, do things like that. And the reports we get of sightings here are just amazing. You know, I'd like to interview a psychiatric nurse I know that saw in the interior of Alaska, outside of Fairbanks, saw a mothership UFO at close range. We're talking bigger than an aircraft carrier. Massive UFO. We have nothing on this planet that could make something like that, that could just, you know, glide around silently with the lights, and obviously very highly advanced technological craft that can move around like that and on such enormous size. Obviously, it's not from this world when you've got reports of something like that, and now all the other reports. So what am I even trying to say? We are living in a time of information. We have AI able to, in fact, if you had AI gather all these reports from Serpo, from the new Grusch interviews that are coming out, Bob Lazar, Colonel Colson's book on Area 51, all this stuff, you could put it together and you could start to kind of formulate the truth. I'm sure some people are starting to do that. However, there is purposeful disinformation inserted in all of these chains of information. There is disinformation that is inserted to throw us off, but we are starting to get a picture just by picking it up. And the best pictures we're getting are the reports that are corroborated with radar and expert eyewitnesses that are in military and law enforcement, along with radar. Those are the reports that you need to pay close attention to, because it's pretty amazing, and that's what you can trust compared to some of these other stories that have kernels of truth. So what I'm getting at, it's a big psyops game. and now things are being slowly released to us. I think that some people aren't going along with the Freedom of Information Act because I think there were programs. It may not have been Serpo, but it was something on that line, and we have whistleblowers coming out, and the truth is coming out, and it is fascinating. So these UFO reports from Alaska do tie into this because we've got military bases here, lots of sightings around those, lots of activity. I'm going to be doing some really interesting investigations this winter that you might like. I can't talk about yet because it's going to be pretty intense. But all of this is happening, and then you've got people from all sides discrediting. I really like Nick Redford, I believe that's his name, Nick Redfern from Mysterious Universe. He believes that Area 51, mainly the Roswell crash, he believes the Roswell crash is all disinformation, 100%. And it really makes you think, because I started thinking about it, the different reports, and nothing was ever confirmed, stories were changed, and it was all meant to throw Russians off in the Cold War, yada, yada, yada. And it does make some sense. However, because of the Colonel's book, The Day After Roswell, I do believe that something did crash in New Mexico. Maybe it wasn't near that town by Roswell, maybe it was somewhere else, but we did reverse engineer some stuff, and it ties into Project Serpo. So all of this is connected, and we just live in an amazing time, and you can't deny that something is going on, and I think we have proof that there is something that is not us intelligently controlling these craft. Now we have proof with the radar and the film and the military reports. It is happening, and shame on those stupid scientists that say, oh, it's just a drone, when obviously a drone doesn't have batteries to keep them at the edge of the atmosphere for days at a time and able to shoot down to the surface of the ocean. So those people, I'm saying right now, are awful. Chime in the comments if you agree. I'm going to continue to be doing mostly Bigfoot reports and investigations and stories with Rob Roy Menzies and Beans Baxter, but every once in a while I'm going to do these alien videos because I enjoy them so much, and it ties into the cryptid and the paranormal universe that I enjoy. So shout out to Joe Mo and the kids and everybody out there that's watching. I appreciate you tuning in every Sunday morning to your Chuke Bigfoot goodness of cartoon Bigfoot and UFO stories, and I'll keep it coming. Thanks, guys.